Hi, I'm Gretchen. This is day 2, part 4 of the Servant Program. Today we're going to be talking about general versus specific effects. And here's the first question. What are the general effects you experience when you engage in your desire obtainment process? We experience both general and specific effects. The most general effect is joy, the same as our most general desire. The closer we are to engaging in the general process to obtain joy, the more satisfying the effects we'll experience. That is why it's so important to remember the events in our lives where we experience joy. In day 2, part 1, you were asked to think about those events where you experience joy in your life. And it's important to have those written down. They come in handy when we're searching for the general process. If you know what joy feels like, then you're well equipped to identify the general process to obtaining joy. So take a minute now to think about what those events in your life were and write them down, review them, look at what process you were engaged in, and see how you can apply that or look for the general process inside of that process, inside of your specific process. And when you have that, come back. If specific causes present to us what they say is the general process to obtain joy, generally we will experience an increase of joy if it is, and a decrease if it isn't. But it's important to remember that we have to at least engage in the suggested process in our thoughts to experience the effects of it. We have to entertain the idea as if it were true. That gives us an initial hypothesis to apply to our actions. We don't want to test out every single idea that is presented to us in our actions first, because that could kill us pretty quickly. What we want to do is test them out in our minds, think about them, and what I do is I write all about it in my journal. I write it down on paper and I explore it there first. Think about it and then monitor my feelings, my effects that I'm experiencing right here to determine the veracity of it. So once we have a hypothesis, because we've thought about it enough, and we've, the ideas that have passed the tests, we can apply those to our actual process. But again, there we want to apply it in a safe environment, in a relationship that we can trust, or we just wanted to test it out there first. And once it's passed the test there, then we can test it out in varying environments, varying relationships that we're a little less sure of. So this enables us to verify our findings incrementally. We can prove our hypothesis with increasing evidence over time. So this is how effects work. When we think about an idea as if it were true in our minds, we're reading it, we're considering it to be true, the effects we experience may not be very intense. They may be just light. And then as we write it down and think about it and take it as our own, at least that way, the effects are going to increase in their intensity. So if we're not sure just upon reading it, the more we spend time with that, the more we entertain it in our mind, then the effects are gonna increase. We're gonna know either way. But even then, sometimes we don't know until we actually walk. We walk the walk. We apply it to our process, and we engage in it. And that's when the effects are going to be probably pretty obvious. But even sometimes we have to continue down that pathway for a little while more until we know, but eventually we will know. If it isn't the pathway, and it's a pretty scary result that we're going to end up in, we are going to be warned, and we don't need to fear that. We are, going to feel some sorrow and the opposite of joy. And that will warn us that, okay, you need to either slow down or you need to stop and reevaluate the situation. So when you read about what you believe to be the general process to obtaining joy, do you experience joy? When you think about it as if it were indeed true, do you experience joy? When you write it down and really think about it in an extended period of time, do you experience joy? When you implement this process into action, do you experience joy? Specific effects are the response processes of our specific causes to our process. So causes will respond to what we do. They may approve of our process or they may disapprove of it. Their effects may be really intense or very subtle. Or sometimes they may not respond at all to our process, which in itself is a response process. So because everyone is different, we're going to experience different responses to our processes. A specific cause who is in alignment with our general cause will only reinforce our general cause's effects of joy with his response process. That's kind of wordy, I know. But it basically is that everybody is responding to everybody else. Everybody is seeing someone's process and then they respond to it. They think about whether they agree with it or they disagree, or whether they don't care or whatever. But everybody is responding to everybody. So when you engage in your desire obtainment process, both the general and the specific, what are the specific effects you receive? Conflict arises when our specific effects conflict with our general effects. When specific causes conflict with our general causes' effects, their effects compete with our general effects. So we may be feeling joy in here initially, but then when we go out and we see how other people are responding to us, then that may change our minds because they have a different opinion of it than our general cause, and so we can see that would be a conflict. So it's important for us to choose our specific causes. We don't want to look to everyone and his dog to validate our process. That's like having a million different conflicting standards to try to meet. So someone says, oh, a little more to the right, a little more to the left, and that we don't know which way to go because people are telling us, you need to do this and you need to do that, you need to go slower, you need to go faster, and it's very confusing. So we do need to choose a specific cause. We need to decide who that is for us. And we'll never know if our process is in alignment with both the general process to obtaining joy and the inherent process to obtaining our specific desire if we're listening to a million causes and their dogs. We must decide who we're going to listen to. So, are you experiencing specific effects that conflict with your general? Just as we can use our general effects to help us identify the general process to obtaining joy, We can also use them to identify questions we have about our specific process that no one else, not even our specific causes, know how to answer for us specifically. So there are some specific questions that are given to us individually that only we can answer. This compels us to figure out how to read our general effects. So in day 2, level 1, it was stated that when we choose a specific desire, we're saying that when I obtain this desire, I believe I will obtain greater joy in my life. So some of us may get hung up between conflicting desires. If we have conflicting desires, there's no way we're going to be able to discern the meaning of our general effects. We need to first make up our mind between the desires using that same process, that thought process first, the writing process, and then putting it into action, and then continued action. And one thing I didn't mention was that I like to write. I like to write down and write out the things I'm thinking about, and but sometimes I do like to talk to other people about them, people I trust, specific causes, because when I talk about them, then I can experience the effects. Sometimes we're not going to people, we don't want them to answer the question for us, but we do want to let them let us talk about it, because that's when those effects are experienced at a more intense level, so we can discern, okay, is this process that I'm choosing the best one? So it's important to go through that process. And once we've gone through that thought, writing, discussion process, and we've come to a hypothesis that is functional, is the best we have. We've given it enough time to think it through, and now it's time to act. And we can't move forward with hesitations, doubts, what ifs, or even holding on to that other desire, saying, well, if this doesn't work out, then I'll just go to this other desire. We actually have to say goodbye to that other desire for good. We need to have full purpose that this is our desire now, that this is the pathway we're taking. We're no longer going to pursue that one or hope that that one is waiting for us if this one fails. We've got to say, put everything into this new pathway. And that's how we act. We leap forward. We have a leap of faith in that. It's kind of scary to let go of other things that might be our safety net. It is scary to do that. So none of us want to make wrong choices, and that is really the downfall. We're talking about a leap of faith here, and when we act as if something is true, we're leaping forward. And so the problem is that we very well might make a wrong choice in that act, in that sequence of steps. So when we make wrong choices, we make our journey harder, we make it longer, and then we experience sorrow. We don't want to make those decisions. We don't want to make those choices. We just want the smoothest path, the most efficient path available. But sometimes we do make those wrong choices. And sometimes it turns out that experiencing that sorrow and that wrong choice was actually the right pathway for us. Because when we know what sorrow feels like, we can know better what joy feels like.